Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Rezende, and in this podcast, I will share my transformational journey to become a health coach. In each episode, I will address a different subject that impacts our health, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Because I've learned that being healthy means being in balance. If you would like to make amazing discoveries, improve your health, get inspired, and yet find sustainable ways to live and help the planet, tune in. You are in the right place. I'm your host, Ana Rezende, and Good is What Makes You Feel Well is Mama Terra's podcast.
Toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala a montanha, contempla a vista, transcende, levita.
What happens when you lead with your soul, connect to Source, and bring mysticism into the everyday? In this episode, I'm joined by Corissa Saint Laurent, multidimensional mentor, entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and host of the globally ranked Everyday Mystic podcast. Corissa is a guide for visionary leaders and seekers, helping them awaken to their deepest wisdom and live from a place of wholeness, alignment, and purpose. She shares her amazing healing story, which is full of mystical experiences. We talk about how storytelling is a means to inspire others looking to integrate the spiritual with the practical, and why stepping into the unknown is often the most powerful move you can make. With a mission to inspire conscious action and soulful leadership, Corissa invites us to see the sacred in the simple, and to remember who we truly are. If you are an entrepreneur in the wellness space, a holistic healer, a mystical business builder, a spiritual seeker, or simply someone curious about living more consciously, this conversation will move you, challenge you, and most of all, expand you. Let's dive in. Please welcome Corissa Saint Laurent. Hi, Corissa.
Hi, Anna.
Welcome to Good is What Makes You Feel Well.
So excited to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. For us to start our conversation, I would like to ask you, what in this moment of your life makes you feel well?
Simple things, being in the sun and getting a lot of rest. I've been very intentionally not setting my alarm for quite a while now and just letting myself sleep as naturally as I can. I wouldn't say nighttime is as natural as it could be. I'm probably up later than my body would want to be, but really getting those two very key things daily or regularly has been major. And being in an environment where I'm honoring myself. And so those two examples are examples of honoring myself, but it's honoring this sacred life and looking at life in that way, that perspective of it being sacred and a gift. And so I move through life now that way, of where I truly do see every moment as this gift and as this sacred experience to get to look around and be in awe and truly feel that. And it took a long time to get here, but it's where I operate from now. And so I'm operating from that place, honoring the operating from that place, because I can absolutely get swept back up into not seeing things as sacred and getting all mirror man, having the excuses and the whatever fly in from all directions. But when I stay with that, knowing that this is a sacred experience, I feel well and I feel aligned and in balance.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful.
So you said it took you a while to get to the place you are today. So how was that journey? How your idea of wellness was at earlier stages of your life and how you got to the point you are today?
Mm. Going way back to childhood, I was dissociated from my body. So completely unaware of what wellness could be because I couldn't feel my body. And I still experience dissociative symptoms, let's say, of where I will be reminded that I'm not connected. I know now what to do to reconnect and to stay connected. And that's all taken practices and things. But all of that, just the learning of that was its own journey. So prior to me even being aware of myself, my body, I had experienced a lot of childhood trauma. My birth mother gave me up for adoption when I was 3 years old. And then I was sent to the United States from Korea into a new American non-Korean family. So my entire world was taken from me, and I was plopped into this new world that I had no idea about, was completely unguarded, but I quickly obviously put my guard up. And so putting the guards up and protecting myself from the unknown, because everything now became unknown. Overnight, everything was unknown. And it was, I think my time at the orphanage too, everything was immediately unknown. Like, what is this place? What am I doing here? Why, where did my mother go? All of this stuff. So my early childhood was marked by that. Guards, barriers, defensiveness obviously went up to protect from the unknown. And as I said, everything was unknown. And so everything was scary and everything was a threat. That's where the dissociation came from. Just completely, I'm going to be in this protective bubble, sort of floating outside of myself and moving through life in this way. That led to all sorts of things. I mean, I would say problems with eating that had to do with, I never had an eating disorder, but I always had a very bingy kind of eating style because it was like I was eating all of these new American foods that probably tasted a lot different than what I was used to. And so it would just be like, I couldn't get enough of it. And I would just take it, suck it all down. And then it became that kind of cycle of where I was eating that way unconsciously and then not eating. And I was a dancer growing up, and a ballet body is something very specific.
Mhm.
And I was naturally thin, so I had that going for me, but I also had this pressure from the ballet world too, to be like a rail thin, no fat on you whatsoever. And so that impressed upon my early adolescent brain in a way that I didn't realize until later,
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
Then I started drinking alcohol. It was probably around the same time, of my early adolescence. I actually started drinking when I was 13, and it was fun and experimental at that time, but it wasn't innocent. I would, back in the day, consider that. I would say, oh, you're just friends having fun. And then it got out of hand. But it wasn't innocent because I sought that for a reason. I knew somewhere within me that this was going to help dull the pain. And it did. It completely did its job in that way. And it also gave me confidence that I didn't have, quote unquote, gave me confidence. It
Mhm.
took away the inhibitions. I was a outgoing kid, but I had a lot of social anxiety. So it's a strange combination. It wasn't like I was shy, and it wasn't like people would consider me to be a wallflower by any means, but I did have a ton of social anxiety, and I was always hiding. I wasn't really comfortable as myself. because I didn't even know who I was. So it was just a very fractured time. And the alcohol helped a ton and helped me feel a sense of peace that I didn't have internally. But that obviously leads to problems because I was using it for those reasons rather than it just being a social relaxant or, something that you could just casually drink. I
Mm,
became a binge drinker.
mm,
And so I experienced all the ill health effects of that, of being in a place where I could even more easily forget my body because I was always drunk. And so I could forget my body when it came to what I put in it, not just the alcohol, but the food and the, other substances, the cigarettes and the drugs. And I could forget about my body when it came to sex and, how it was being used in that way. And it just led to deeper and deeper dissociation,
mm.
which is the opposite of well. I had no connection and was doing harmful things because of that lack of connection. I was self-destructing.
Mhm.
So that was the early stages and early adolescence into my 20s. And it wasn't until I experienced some greater openings, both in my teenage years and then in my early 20s, that I saw something different. I got these gifts of a spiritual opening that gave me hope. It gave
Mm.
me an understanding that, oh, this is not all of what life is, and you're meant for more. And this is truly what it is. And I got to experience that. And that was incredible, but it didn't break my habits. It didn't heal my heart. It didn't fix my dissociation. It was all things that I then had to choose to go and explore that. I got the invitation, but then it's like, well, we invited you to the party. Now you've got to come to the party. We're not dragging you here. So that led to decades of healing work, working on discovering what it was that I missed, what it was that I had lost, healing my heart, going into these deep, dark places that I had hidden away or had protected myself from. And so in that process, which we're talking decades long process, I came to understand myself and who I really am. I came back home to myself, and all of the bad habits just fell away. I didn't have to try to quit things. I didn't struggle, if you will. I mean, I struggled in the doing of those things, and there were many areas of struggle, many bad situations that came about. But in the quitting of any of these things, there wasn't a struggle because I was operating from a new version of myself that didn't identify with those things anymore. So that part was easy, but the getting there was difficult and challenging.
Yeah, yeah. Such a beautiful journey. So you said you had those spiritual callings and awakening signs showing up in your life. What were those?
When I was 16 years old, my birth mother, had given me up when I was 3, and then I was adopted, and my adoptive mother left our family and moved across the country when I was 14. So at 14 years old, I was experiencing this second abandonment and also just experiencing everything from, the initial traumas and not having dealt with that because, my father is a wonderful man. He just didn't know what I'm going through. He had no idea. He didn't know to ask. He didn't know what was happening. There was one thread of sending me to rehab because he found a bottle of alcohol in my room, but there was no questioning behind that. Like, why? Why do you have this in there? Why are you drinking? There was nothing like, let's sit down and talk about this. It was just like, we're going to send you to rehab. So I'm operating from this place of reaction, and my solutions weren't great. They were not healthy solutions, but they were working on some level of myself. But at 16 years old, I had a massive accident, and that was my wake up call from God giving me this opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, this invitation to understand life from a different perspective. So I ended up in the intensive care unit. And during my stay there, I all of a sudden was speaking through myself. I was not speaking as myself. A voice was speaking for me, through me to the hospital staff, just questioning everything. What are you giving me? What does it do? What are the side effects? Is that necessary for my healing? And I would just go through this litany of these questions. I was battering them. And I wasn't this type of kid. I was a scared 16-year-old that had social anxiety, and I was in the intensive care unit not knowing what's my future going to look like. So I didn't have this bold personality in that way to be asking and even questioning authority in any way. So this was something else, and it was completely coming through me, but I trusted it. I had no qualms trusting this. So I let that happen, and it was guiding me into a better circumstance than what I was experiencing there. And they would not give me certain medication that I would refuse. And it was the advocacy that I needed at the time. And I think it was a self-empowerment step that I absolutely needed. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but it was all happening for me and through me. When I got home after my stay in the ICU, the voice grew, and it was with me, and it stuck with me, and it just guided me through visualizing my healing and guided me in my healing. It didn't heal me.
Uh-huh.
It literally guided me in my healing. It showed me what to visualize, what to focus on, what to say, and just created this beautiful, calm, trusting
Mm-hmm.
space to do that. Like I said, I never questioned this from the beginning. What is this voice? Am I going crazy? I just was in complete trust. So during the months that I was home, I healed myself. We all heal ourselves anyway. I mean, we just have this natural ability to heal, but I was able to guide deeper healing. I was able to turn and tell my father, I'm going to be completely fine. Everyone's worried about what the future is going to hold for me. And as I had lost my sense of smell, my memory was all messed up. And I knew I was completely confident I will be 100% better or even better than that. It's like what I visualized, I knew would come true. I had zero doubts in that. Years later of reflecting on what this experience was, I knew was a spiritual awakening. I knew was my higher guidance coming in to show me, to guide me, and to make it safe for me to explore these realms. And I started to, but all in these little drips and draps. It was very easy to go back to
Gradual.
sleep.
Mm.
Yeah, because I was 16 and I had no one around me to help me in this. No one to ask what this is. Where I go? What do I study? Things would come to me and I would find things, and I started like getting into lucid dreaming, and realizing I've always been a lucid dreamer. Wow. But in this book, I don't know where it came from. It just came to me, and learned that this was a thing. Like, oh, people study this at Stanford. Like, oh my gosh, this is what I've always done. And so I started to get signs, and different teachers, whether they came in a book or not, showed up to keep me going on the path. But I also very quickly went back to bad habits, back to dissociation, back to avoidance and distraction, which was my MO. And then flash forward to age 20, I was at my complete rock bottom at that point. So although I had been exploring some things, I was on the fast track to straight to the bottom. And that was everything from how I was feeling in my body to what I was putting in my body to how I was operating from my heart. My heart was completely broken. It was so broken, and I was operating from this broken place. So I was involved in a relationship that mirrored that and just kept breaking it more and more and more. And it was tragic, but beautiful relationship because it did teach and show me so much. And then the drinking, drugging, food habits all were at the very worst that they had ever been. And I had started thinking about suicide. Never got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. Oh, and this is how I'm going to do it. Never got to that stage. But the thoughts came in, and I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Where's that coming from? I had enough still, I guess, sense of a deeper knowing to know that that's not right. This feeling that I want death is not right. Something's very wrong here. And it did start to wake me up. And it led me, and I was shown and guided to a study abroad office on my campus and had never thought about studying abroad. None of my family went to college or had, any of these experiences. I didn't know anybody that had studied abroad. So it wasn't like, oh, it's this thing you go do. And everyone had told me about it. Like, you've got to go away for your junior year. But somehow I ended up in that office and collected the brochures and was on this almost automatic train of I'm going to go do this. And I was being guided again to go and have this experience. It was the answer, although I didn't know anything about what that answer was. I just knew that it was going to guide me to some answers. So I did everything I needed to do. I got my grades up, I applied, I got accepted, and I went and I spent a year in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Oh, I bet it
So
was.
amazing.
It's
And
on
it
my
was in
bucket list.
yeah, yes, go. Haven't been back since, and that was a long time ago that I was there. 30 years now. Over
Wow.
30 years ago, I was there. And it was magical then. I'm sure it's magical now. But for me, it was even more magical because I had this experience my first month there. I was hiking and I was alone and I was trudging up this mountain with all of these voices and chatter and demons haunting me, telling me that I wasn't worthy, telling me that I had no right to be here and what are you doing? And by this point, because of all my habits, although I was always a thin girl, I had gotten heavy and I was unwell and not fit. So I'm trudging up this mountain and feeling sorry for myself. Like, oh, what are you're fat and you're unhealthy and you're blah, 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 this. And these voices are coming at me and I'm just beating myself up through this entire journey up this mountain, sweating and cold sweats and like all sorts of horror. It was horrible. And I finally get up to this clearing, and it's a little plateau, like a vista overlooking this valley. And I was finally out of the trees. So all of a sudden, I'm in this sunlight, and it was beautiful. I'm like, oh, I can take a break. And I put my pack down, and I grab my water bottle, and I decide to sit there for a little while and journal about, my experience, what my thoughts, feelings, etc. And I opened my journal, and this card fell out, and it was the memorial service card for my grandmother who had died a couple years earlier. And I kept it in my journal, and it fell out onto the ground. And I bent over, picked it up. And when I came up, everything around me just exploded in light. And I was lifted up into this light and floating in complete love and bliss and God energy.
Wow. I have goosebumps.
It
Oh
was the
my
most
goodness.
incredible thing I had ever experienced up until then. And I couldn't put into words beyond that what it felt like, but it felt like bliss. It felt like love, but not the love that we experience as humans. It was a godly love. It was completely unconditional, so, so beautiful. And it's what I knew everyone here is meant to experience. It's what I knew I deserved and what I was meant to feel and have. And I knew that. And there was no question of worthiness anymore. There was no question of, am I enough? It was just like, absolutely, you are. We all are. And this is what we all have access to. Are you ready? And then I got this download of you need to go and heal your heart and find your gifts and share them with the world. And that just like repeated in my beingness around me. And then everything kind of came back down into the world, and I landed on the ground and fell to my knees and just bawled. It was beautiful and unexplainable, but the most real thing that I've ever experienced. Strange as it was to me, again, it was one of those things I just completely accepted as reality, and even more reality than my real life. That's how it felt. It was that real.
Love embrace, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't like when you have an experience, and some people who've had experiences with plant medicine have said the same thing, that their experience under the influence of that plant felt more real than what they would call reality. And that's what it was like for me. If that felt more real than the being back on the ground and going, oh, wait a minute, what just happened? From that point on, it was, all right, that's my mission. Heal my heart and find my gifts and then share them with the world. And I spent the last 30 years doing that. And that's the journey of saying yes to yourself, saying yes to the greater mission that we signed up for coming here. And I'm just so grateful that I got to answer that call. And I got the opportunity to do that before I made some stupid mistake. And I think that, if someone chooses suicide or chooses to end their life through drinking or drugs and they overdose or something, I also don't think that's a stupid mistake. I know it would have been for me because I was feeling the pull in the other direction. I watched this incredible documentary. I can't remember the name of it right now, but they filmed on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. People, have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but I've heard an interview. I cannot remember the name of the guy, but the guy that jumped and started a movement to screen the bridge and protect people from jumping.
Mm-hmm. And this might have been the same guy in this documentary who survived.
It might, yeah.
Was immediately regretful as soon as he jumped. Like,
yes,
what did
that's
I do?
the guy, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when I say, oh, it's a big mistake. It's like, it's for us that know that we would regret that move and that we feel this call. And when you choose something like that, and it is the final bitter end, I do believe that that was the right choice. And for him, it wasn't the time. So he was saved and he survived, and he got to experience the telling of that, oh, my first thing was regret. But we can't speak to, well, some of us can, but most of us can't speak to those who were succeeded in their suicide. Maybe it was the best relief in the world. It was the most beautiful, peaceful thing that they ever did in this lifetime because of how much they struggled and suffered, and it was their time. So I can't say what was right for anybody else, but for me, there was enough of that pull in these other directions to know I've got to explore that. The exploration itself was challenging and difficult. And that's, I guess, what I signed up for.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that gave me goosebumps. There is an image from a Disney movie that came to my mind, and that is my favorite of all times Disney movie. It's an animation. The Brother Bear. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't seen
So
that.
there is this moment, because it's an ancient Indian tribe north in Canada, and this little Indian boy is turned into a bear. And the moment that happens is all the spirits come and they lift him up and turn him into a bear and put him down. So when you were telling me that experience you had, that was the image that came to my mind. And then this ancient tradition in this tribe, that is what they believed, that the spirits had the power to interact with the humans in so many different ways. And one way was that. So, yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love this story. But tell me, so you said 30 years you have been in this journey of healing and putting your heart back together and finding ways to show your gifts to the world. What were the main tools that helped you in this journey?
Mm. Early on, it was doing both for myself, and then I studied and practiced it as well, Reiki
Mm.
and energy work that went beyond Reiki and doesn't have a name, but it was channeled through me through a Reiki master who has, she's a multidimensional Reiki master. Some people do practices and they follow traditions very closely and they are adherent to the ways of those traditions and they sort of stay in the box of that. And then some people take on and learn from those traditions and truly make it their own. They are now operating outside of that system. And she was somebody that I got my Reiki master certification through her, but it wasn't just Reiki. She was master full on a lot of different levels. And so working with her and then working with this energy in my life and then eventually with clients, allowing myself to be that channel was huge. And it was I would say an initiation into trusting myself, trusting my guidance, trusting my body, trusting what I could do for people and with people. So that taught me and started to build back the trust that I had lost over all of these years of being dissociated and being, under the trauma blanket. And body work in general was huge. Really being able to work with my body, because dissociation is your mind breaking away from and creating a different reality. So you're in like a reality tunnel over here. This can lead to, dissociative personality disorder, where people have what we used to call multiple personality disorder, where they have absolutely like different personalities that don't even know and remember each other.
Mm-hmm.
So dissociative disorder is just an earlier step or stage of that, where we're breaking away or off, cleaving off, some aspect of ourself from the body. And so getting back in touch with my body and going and doing different types of dance than what I had been raised in,
Mm-hmm.
getting body work done and being touched in a safe way and moving through, allowing my nervous system to just get back into a normal type of regulation. Yoga, tons of yoga and breath work. All of that was extremely helpful, is still helpful. All of it are, when you learn a practice, it becomes a lifelong journey with that practice. Some things, yeah, you might say, oh, okay, I have my time and place with that. I'm not going to do that anymore or need that anymore. And I've definitely had experiences like that before too. But something as basic as our breath, of when you start to learn how to actually breathe and connect into the fullness of your body. And a therapist noticed this about me early on. It was my first session with her. She said, I'm a chest breather. Like, did you notice that you breathe from your chest? And I was like, no, like, what do you mean? So then she tapped me in and we went into this breath session. And I realized, holy shit, I'm like so shallow, just like, and I was probably like this, like all tight in here and didn't know, just completely unaware that that was how I was operating. And it took someone pointing it out for me to be able to explore that. And so breath work is an ongoing practice that connects me back to myself but just the remembrance of my breath and playing with and understanding my breath allows me to understand myself better. And I want to share a story around it because it's an interesting turn of events. And that happened around my breath because I always had such this shallow relationship with it until I learned how to get deeper with it. And now I'm in my 30s in this story. My husband and I honeymooned in Korea, where I'm from.
Uh-huh.
And we went to Korea and Japan for our honeymoon. And my husband's amazing. He was just like, well, if we're going to go to Korea, we need to go to your orphanage. And I was like, oh, I don't know if you really want to do that on our honeymoon? Like, it's pretty heavy stuff. And he was like, we have to, absolutely.
That was
So
your first time back
first
to
time
Korea?
back. hmm I had
Wow.
never investigated my birth story up
Uh-huh.
until this point. We decided to do that. I reached out to the orphanage and I booked an appointment with them. And it happened to be for the first day of our honeymoon. So we fly into Korea, we have one night of sleep. The next day, we're at the orphanage. And I got to hear about myself and hear, all these records because my parents did not have my actual real records. They had records that were falsified information that was given to them. That's a whole nother story that it's probably, we can't go deep into that at the moment, but they were given a set of records that weren't me.
Oh.
My real records were at the orphanage, and the only way I could learn that information was to go there. They won't
Uh-huh.
send them to you, they'll fax them to you, they won't give them to you. So in going there, I got to hear my story, my actual story, why or how, at least what they knew as to why I was given up. They had information on my birth parents, which we never had. My parents were told I was abandoned naked at a police station, and that was it. And then they got me. I was a Jane Doe.
And that was
But
not true.
behold, not true. They had all this information, and my story was there. At least way more information than I ever had. Flash forward 2 years later from the information that we had, we found my birth mother, and I got to meet her. And my husband got to meet her. And I was in my first trimester of my pregnancy with my son. And it was the most beautiful, full circle moment of my life. And in meeting her, I obviously learned, all sorts of stuff and learned about my heritage. My birth father was not her husband. She had been divorced, and so she was not an adulterer, but he was. He had a whole family and 9 other daughters and had an affair with my mom and had me. And I learned about that side of the story. I learned about him. I was told at the orphanage he was Japanese. And so I thought I was half Japanese for at least that 2 years. Come to find out, he's from an island called Jeju-do. And this is a small island off of the southern coast of South Korea.
Wow.
And we had been there on our honeymoon. And so when we were on our honeymoon, had no idea that that was part of my history and part of my story in any way, shape, or form. We just wanted to go there because the nickname of this island is Honeymoon Island.
Oh my
So we're like, oh, we got to go to
goodness.
Honeymoon Island on our honeymoon. And it was a beautiful stay and it was really wonderful. While we were there on the island, we learned about these divers. They're called the Haenyeo, and these are women free divers that dive into the sea and collect shellfish, abalone, sea cucumber, all sorts of things, and they do it without oxygen, just free dive
Uh-huh.
down. And it's a tradition of since the 30s or 40s, I believe. And it's always been women, and they do it into their 80s. And it's a dying tradition, unfortunately, because a lot of young women don't continue it on. So then the oldest ones are starting to age out. We learned about all of that there. We saw some on the shore and we were like, wow, that's so cool. And while we were at this resort, there's a swimming pool that was an outdoor pool. And then the swimming pool went inside. You could swim under like this wall, you could go through an archway and then swim into the building, and it was a whole nother pool. So it
Uh-huh.
was just the two giant pools that was like this outdoor indoor pool at this resort. When we were there, my husband was, trying to show off to me, and he's like, "Oh, look, babe." And he goes underwater and he swims underwater holding his breath, and he pops up, somewhere still in the outdoor pool somewhere, after the halfway mark. And I was like, "Oh, that's great, babe." And he thinks, so maybe I could have done better, but okay. And he's like, "Why don't you try?" I'm like, "Okay." So I go and get in the water. I don't, do any weird preparation because I've never done this before. I just like take a breath and I go underwater and I swim the whole length of the outdoor pool and then into the indoor pool, the entire length of the indoor pool. And then I start to turn around and come back. And then everything's super quiet underwater, right?
Uh-huh.
So and the indoors of the pool area is darker than the outside. So I felt super alone. And I was like, oh, this is stupid. Are they even watching me anymore? Because, I just felt like so long and so lonely. So I pop up and they were like, they, meaning my husband and this other tourist, were like, what the heck was that? How did you do that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I've never done that before. And I'm like, I think I could have gone longer. And they were
Wow.
blown away. So this was this experience of myself and my breath that I had never had before, a connection to this almost like a reserves of this breath that I had been holding for so long. And I was finally reconnecting to it, reconnecting to the depth of my breath, the depth of my being, exploring the depths of my being. It was an incredible trip all around. And then to find out 2 years later that my heritage is partly from there, it hit me even after I found out about, my father being from there. I was like, wow, maybe I come from this lineage of Haenyeo, and there's
Mhm.
something in my DNA and something in my genes that allowed that to all happen. So it is an exploration that's never ending. I keep finding these new nuggets, those gifts that we all can discover along this journey that I was given this mission to discover in the healing of my heart and not being afraid to explore what that is. Because the reason I didn't ever look into my birth history is because of how painful it is.
Mhm.
Bottom line, I used every excuse in the book. Oh, I was abandoned. There's no information on me. Oh, my parents don't have any information. I'll never find anything out. All of those are just convenient excuses. For me, it was fear, complete fear of what I would discover and the pain it would bring up in me. And when we have the courage to explore those things in ourselves and in our lives, that's truly where those gifts come from as we heal. And whether or not, there's a story like mine or a story even more tragic than mine, we all have things to heal from. And I think in the process of that healing is the journey of wellness, is that journey to well-being. It doesn't happen just from one practice or one therapy session or one, set of supplemental regime that you go on. It's not just a silver bullet thing. It's a truly holistic approach to understanding ourselves and decoding who we are and facing all of those fears.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lifelong journey,
Mhm.
at least for us mortals.
Yeah.
Maybe not for, I don't know, Buddha or maybe Gandhi, but yeah.
I would say it's a lifetime's long journey.
Yeah, that's true. Not a one lifetime. Yes, multiple lifetimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. What a beautiful story. Oh my goodness. It's so rich, incredible. So, and now, how do you help other people heal themselves based on the gifts that you acquired along this whole journey?
Part of it is in sharing these stories. So thank you so much
Mm-hmm.
for giving me this opportunity to talk with you and share the story, because it's part of the work. It's part of the service. And I do that on my podcast as well. I started that with the same intention, to share stories that people could potentially see themselves in and go, oh, okay, that sounded like me, or oh, that was me when I was at my lowest point, or that could be me at my highest point, or any type of mirroring that, the what I can tell and then what my guests can tell is healing. It's a different kind of healing. It's a healing through the energy of the stories. And it's truly like shamans and Native Americans, and I'm sure other lineages of the past would heal as well through storytelling. And that to me is a powerful ways and means of guiding people, because I can't heal anybody. The only healer that I am is a healer of myself. I don't heal other people. When I used to do healing work, more traditional healing work, it ended up really burning me out. And I repelled from it because I was attracting people who wanted me to fix them. They weren't at all interested in going on the journey themselves. Some of them were, a few of them were, most of them were not. They were just wanting me to fix them. Even though it was more holistic and it was healthier, it was just like taking a pill, just like getting a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that that would be the thing that would heal them. And then they would come back and it was the same issues, and they had not addressed any of the things that we had talked about. I ended up moving from that into being a wellness consultant, because at least there I could consult and help connect them to other healers. So at that point, I was a wellness consultant with a huge referral network, and I would just connect people to and say, I would feel intuitively, as well as just based on everything I had studied, what they could potentially try and do that would be
Mm-hmm.
helpful to them along their journey. And then I would just say, go and see this person, go and, see my friend Cesar, go and see this woman. And that to me was a way of removing myself from what I considered a toxicity of that victimhood energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was in it too. That's why I did that work, because I was in that place too. And I had to leave it because I had to go on the journey of freeing myself from that. And not that all healers operate in this way, obviously, but it is a work that is very humbling, because what it teaches you in the end is that the only person that can heal you is you. And so you can see amazing healers who have that understanding. And if anyone is looking for advice on, oh, how do I choose the right healer, is someone who's doing that work themselves. They are doing the work, they are walking the path, they are completely still within the vulnerability of that experience of living this life of, I'm right here with you. I am healing. As I share these words with you, I'm healing myself. I know that everything I've said today has been, if it's useful at all to your audience, it's been even more useful to me to say it and to speak it and to know it. So that would be the way in which I, quote unquote, offer healing these days, is through those means and methods. And I'm also an intuitive guide. I mostly do that with entrepreneurs and helping guide them in the structuring of their businesses, and then the structuring in the way that they work, aligning them to the energy of what they're trying to create. Because you can create something in the 3D world, but you're also creating it in the ethereal and in the energetic planes, whether you know it or not. But we have a lot of work to do in aligning those two things. Because if you create something here in this physical plane and you think, this is amazing, this is going to, make me all this money, and this is going to be a successful business, and then you keep running into barrier after barrier, or saboteur after saboteur, you're not actually getting the results you want, then typically it's because there are energetic blockages going on. There's misalignment in that picture you've created, not that there's anything wrong with that 3D structure. We just have to structure the other realms to align with that. And it's often removing blocks and allowing people to see what those blocks are. Again, I don't remove any blocks. I don't do anything physical for people. I am not doing the work. I'm just pointing it out. Be like, block there. This is what I'm seeing. This is what's happening. Now, it's your choice whether you want to go do something about it and do something with it. And that's I think, the way that I've learned to work finally after all these years, because I used to be a fixer and somebody that was hell bent on fixing this person, my boyfriends, my clients, I wanted to fix everybody, and realized over all of those years that that's not any of our jobs. It's only the sole job of that person whose life they're living. And they get to get into communion with the energy of all that is, and get into relationship with their guides, and in relationship with their higher guidance and with their higher self, to make all of those things happen. All the things that are suggested from beautiful healers and spiritual teachers and guides around the world, all of those things, then they can synthesize them finally and actually make them their own. But if you try to just slap those things on like band-aids and think it's going to fix or heal anything, you're just going to be on this perpetual cycle of spending your life savings on, plugging a hole here, and then just more continues to happen around until you address, the real issues, until you really truly have the courage to face yourself, face who you really are, face what you're really here to do, and
Face your
go into
traumas, your
those
story,
deep dark
your
places.
past. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always through shining light on the shadows that they can be gone. And nobody can do that for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
have
we
to
think we
go
can
there.
shine lights for people. I truly think that's what we are as healers or spiritual teachers and guides, is that we can hold the light up,
Mhm.
show
Help
someone,
them see. Yeah.
help them see and say, look, here it is, or come this way. All of those ways of indicating, or hold a light up on ourselves and shine that light and say, this is what I did. If this is helpful at all in any way, or resonates with you in any way, then beautiful. Go and
Yeah.
take that with you
Yeah.
and do something with it. But shining a light is one thing, and then actually, taking out the chisel and the hammer and doing the fixing is another. That's something all done by the self.
Yeah. 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 That's great. So, storytelling, and I know you have had like amazing guests in your podcast, The Everyday Mystic, and I've listened to so many episodes and I was inspired by many of them. I do believe in storytelling too. And that's why I started podcast as well, because through your struggles and your present existence, I think we can give so many people insights on what they can achieve, what they can do, and I think that is part of our mission, and that's how I see it. So tell the listeners how they can find you, and tell about the beautiful mentorship program that you just launched, and how they can get a hold of you.
Everything can be found on theeverydaymystic.org, and that is the name of the podcast. And Anna's been a guest. I was so honored to have you come on and share some of your stories and all sorts of insights. And as she said, with that podcast, it is service. It truly is. I try to, with the guests and with the ones that I do on my own, share both stories and insights, things that can be helpful guidance for us all to live into our birthrights here as everyday mystics. That's where the name comes from. It's not meant for the clerics and the scholars and those who have done a certain amount of bows and a certain amount of kissing of feet. Like, we all get to have a direct experience with the divine because that is who we are. And when we understand and know that, that's living the life of a mystic, that we are connected to our divinity and honoring that. That's that sacred life that we talked about at the beginning. We are honoring ourselves as a sacred being here who gets to have this experience of the spark of divine creation walking around on earth. It's pretty amazing. So to have that honor to do that comes with a lot of responsibility too. So the hearing of these stories and the advice and the insight, etc., that we drop is a way to get guidance. So the podcast itself is a way that you can help be guided in this life and to learn mystical practices and things that you can pick up that will help open you up and continue guiding you along this path. If you want to go further, I just launched a community, and that community has more time for interactions. So I do now a online meeting with people of where I will connect and transmit messages, do channel transmissions, do activations, do meditations and guided visualization with people, as well as open it up for discussion around what's coming up for people right now in the energy of that time and place that we're doing it in. And it's a guided gathering, if you will. So there's some things that I will start with and then open it up into how we're all connecting in that energy. So people can join the community if you want to dive into this work as your business because you're called. And that's what happens to so many people on this path of discovery and exploration, is that they go, oh, my life has changed. Now I want to go and do the work, right? I was healed by this thing. I'm going to go now learn that and give it to others as a gift. And what a beautiful reciprocity that we enter into when that happens. So if that's you and you're been guided and healed by energy work or through any healing work, or that kind of health coaching work that you do, Anna, if this is something that this is my mission to bring this into the world, this is my soul is calling me to this, then the Epic Entrepreneur Program that we just launched is totally for you, because that helps to guide you into launch ready phase of your business. I've been everything I shared about my life up until now, which has been mostly in my personal life, but my professional life has been in marketing and business development, working for very conventional companies, not in, these mystical spiritual places. And now I'm bringing it all together into the house of the everyday mystic, of where I get to work with soul-led entrepreneurs who want to bring beautiful things into the world and help guide them with very strategic business help and information, but also energetic guidance and alignment. And it's myself and 4 other incredible mentors, one who and 3 others who have all been on my podcast. They're all amazing multidimensional mentors and entrepreneurs. So they are people who are walking the walk, doing the work themselves, doing not just the business work, but also the work of life themselves so beautifully, so vulnerably. And they're just beautiful souls. They're incredible, heart opened people, meaning by heart opened, their heart shines out. There's nothing blocking that. There's no fear there of sharing their hearts with the world. And that to me is next level multidimensional living. It's getting to that place finally where we are able to share that whole self and that fully formed heart, this beautiful light that we carry within us. That all comes with this program because it's coming through us. And it's 3 months long of guidance to get to this launch ready point. And then the future is being paved with other retreats and events and other programs and courses that you can find all at theeverydaymystic.org.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's just an honor to have you shining your light here and sharing all that with us.
Oh, it's been my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Keep doing this beautiful work and keep sharing more beautiful stories, and together we rise, right?
Step by step. Yes.
Yay. Thank you so much, Corissa.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening. It means a lot to me that you chose to be here. To help Mama Terra's mission of making the world a disease-free place for generations to come, you can follow the show, write a review, or talk to your friends about it. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Every week, I craft good health and wellness tips, recipes, and book recommendations with love and care, just for you. My intention is to give you information and resources to help you make good choices and feel well. Find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again for being here. We have lots of new episodes coming up, so stay tuned. And remember, good is what makes you feel well.
Transcende, levita, toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga.